Yo, what up, guys? This is QB from the Chopper Express here to give you my insight on the recent ban list that they decided to drop at 1 a.m. Central Time. Basically, they did kind of like a new ban list. Basically, we got restrictions on 3 different cards, all red, all pretty broken. But I'm also just here to give you my insight, give you what I think the metal shift will look like for the next month, and then possibly just also my insight of like why these are good hits, why this, why saying that they're taking a look at it in OPO4 is also a good strat going forward as well. And but first off, I want to give a round of applause for Bandai on this one. And it's not necessarily the fact that they hit these specific cards, it's the fact that they made a list to try and target a problem that's in the game currently, and whether they can retroactively go back and change these cards, change it back if this is just like not, if there's like still the same problems and say these cards weren't the problem, they can go change it back if they want to. But starting now and saying, hey, is there, can we make a shift in the game to where something, the red strategies may not be as strong as it currently is, and it kind of tapers it back a little bit, then I think just starting now, like, they give me hope that like they're looking at the game, they care about the game, and at the end of the day, they're willing to make changes. And I think that's really important when we're really talking about the card games in general, is that we want the companies to be invested in this way. So regardless of whether or not we agree with the decisions that they made, I think it's very important that even early part in this game, we've been playing this game probably for like 5 or 6 months at this point, maybe a little bit more, probably like 8 months. But they're already continuing to make restrictions. You don't want them to restrict everything, but when you see a problem or you see a color dominance, then you kind of want to like taper it back. I mean, they could have waited till OPO4, but and saw how it fared, but they decided to do that right now just to kind of change up the meta right here. So basically the 3 cards that they restricted to one, they have Young Whitebeard, Blocker Marco, and Radical Beam. I'm going to talk about these in the order of what I think is the most influential, or the least influential to the most influential. The least influential one, I think, is Marco. I think this is probably, in my expectation, this is probably the one card that probably is going to end up going back up to 4 after a while, because I think what happens now inside of the red strategy is they don't have any good blockers. And if they don't have any good blockers to play any type of mid-range game, it is full aggro all the time. Face is the place. And so now, because basically they either have to play, a lot of the blockers I think that are remaining outside of like Bartolomeo are like 3K or less, 2K or less, and a lot of those in this meta at least, because I think Marco is still going to be a strong card, the 5 drop, they just get popped, or that the people are going to start playing other techs to try and beat Zoro. So now you're inherently putting cards in your deck that just still get hit by those pops that would be for the Zoro strat. Now your blockers don't get any value. So it's hard for a pure red deck to play any type of mid-range strategy, because it's hard for them to protect their life at the end of the day. They have to basically be winning the game or winning the board state to like protect everything. And that's kind of where I see Marco at right now. I think it's still a strong one of, like, obviously when you're able to access it, it's still going to be able to float for a lot. I don't think it was like a biggest problem inside of like the red strategy, whether that be Whitebeard or Zoro, like, but it is hard for some decks to continuously try and play through the one blocker to inflict that damage, while they have to like inflict, basically get through, make him block first off, and then try and get cards out of their hand in order to like Marco not to come back. So I understand why I went to 1, but if there was any card that I think could go back up to 4, it's probably this one at the end of the day. The next card that I think, second card, is Edward Newgate. I think that like this basically is just a Whitebeard hit. There's kind of some Zoro strategies that were mid-range, but this is mostly like a Whitebeard hit, because when you go back to back to back to Newgates, it's just hard to win those type of games. But now most decks can say, they can accept the fact that one Newgate is coming down, knowing that another Newgate is coming down, and so they can like still play in a way that like they can plan for the next turn to be aggressive, because they know there's no way for your opponent to just go, oh, I'm back at 8 or I'm back at 7 again, try and do it again through like all the cards in my hand and things like that. So I think it kind of tapers Whitebeard back. I think it's still a strong deck. I know that some people are like getting rid of the cards, but I still think the deck's strong. It's still gonna do what it does. If you go first or go second, and you curve your opponent out, like it's gonna do that. They're just big cards, and even if they like they lost a lot of cards in a sense, so they have to fill out basically what 3, 6, 9 cards. But I think it has the ability. It's probably going to taper back more to where they were in OPO2 around the beginning, which is more the strawberry list. But I think there's still opportunity for the deck to still be really strong. But there may be better options. But it also gives other rogue matchups a better opportunity to play against Whitebeard now than they did before, especially with the Marco being gone. And then the last card, to me, I think this is like a really, really good hit for right now. And maybe it would come back in the future when other decks have access to cards that are just as good as this one. But right now, this card is broken. It's been broken we're going to set 3. It would have been broken going into set 4. It's so hard to kill your opponent when like they leave a 2 Dawn and you're just like, they can go from 5k to 13k, and then it's just hard. So, and it's hard to play around because now you're having to try and ship like 7s or 8s to try and like bait it out, and it's like, oh, well, I'll give you 2 real cards now, because at the end of the day, as long as they make it to the next turn, it doesn't matter. But I think this is a good hit in general because it decreases consistency for some of the cards that are already in the card pool, like Buggy or Marco, or they have to put other events that just, let's be real, just aren't as good as this card. If the red deck puts Red Hawk in their deck, like it's a good card in the mirror, it's a good card against some other decks, but like it's not the same as Radical Beam. A lot of the 2 cost events that are also 4K, they're good, but like you could play around those cards. You can't really, like, because Radical Beam is 1 mana just for the 4K, it's kind of hard to play around that, and having your opponent be able to just hold multiple, I think it's a really good hit when it comes down, because I think it's also like a red hit in general, which is really what it needed. And so it kind of decreases how powerful Buggy and Marco are, and now it feels like, yes, the red deck for the next probably month and a half is going to be hyper aggro list, kind of similar to the Haruta list that won the play TCG. I believe. I do believe we're going to go through a good month and a half too, where it is hyper aggro faces the place. But I think that once we get through that, get into OPO4, get a lot more cards that like deal with early game, then we'll kind of see that hyper aggro will be able to like be beat more consistently than what it is right now. And what I did for that is I went ahead and looked through kind of some of the cards that went through OPO4. I'll show you those right now. Basically cards that, I'm not saying these cards are like the answer to Zoro or anything like that. What I'm saying is these are cards that are just coming out in the next set, and this is why I think it's kind of a good hit. When we're talking about the hyper aggro deck, you may want like some of the cards in Zoro hit or some of the searchers hit, but it's so much, I think it's easier as a designer of the game to build cards that kind of beat the early game, that kind of beat decks that are just hyper aggro and things like that. And I'm not saying these cards are, like I said, I'm not saying these cards are the answer, but these are cards that I just picked out that said, okay, this card's a 1-drop that rests a one drop character. That matters when you're playing a sword, because you're just trying to take off the tempo, slow the game down just a little bit so you can kind of stabilize. You got Sugar coming out, which is basically she gets to rest 2 cards. You got Dofi. This is one of the ones that's not early game, it's kind of late game, but it kind of punishes your opponent for going all out. Now you have a 10-drop that if you start stacking them back to back to back, the Zoro player doesn't have a chance to commit to get in the game. So I think that's good. Purple's getting a card that stops people from attacking if they're playing Baroque Works. It's not, like I said, it's not a broken card, but it's a card that kind of stays off the pressure a little bit. You get the Dressrosa getting their pops for the 1 cost for free, and I believe trashing card from the deck, which they wanted to do. They got Leo, got a yellow card from the starter deck that pops 1 and also adds itself back to hand. And then we have the Last Really Blue getting their 2 cost 4K counter that puts 1 to the bottom of the deck, puts a 1 cost to the bottom of the deck. Like, there are cards coming out that are going to be able to, that are built to try and slow down those hyper aggressive strategies. And we're not saying that, like I said, not saying that they're going to fix the meta and make Zoro not be super hyper aggressive and people are going to have to change, but there's going to be ways that people can build their deck to kind of play into the hyper aggressive strategy. So where do I think the meta is going from here for the next probably month and a half once the list becomes official? I do believe that we're going to see a lot of Zoro. And I think that, but with that comes decks that are fairly good against Zoro. Like, you may see a lot more Law coming back, see some Dofi coming back. And I think those are two decks that like in OPO1 they kind of fared pretty well against Zoro. They, if you see your engine as well as seeing like Vista in your Law deck or playing your Robin or in the blue deck or in the Dofi deck, just being able to outlast make the game go longer because you have so much counter power to counter out of everything. It kind of gets to the point where those decks did favor pretty well in that meta at the one point. But I think a lot of people are going to cater to the Zoro deck. You do see the yellow deck and the black deck that do pretty struggle hard with Zoro, but they're gonna have to tip their deck list to kind of favor Zoro. But now you're able to build for one deck. Yeah, I think that was probably the hardest part of this format is you're trying to build for Whitebeard and build for Zoro, which are two different strategies. Like Whitebeard is trying to basically go like oppression by going tall and kind of like the board being kind of small versus Zoro, which is trying to go wide and do a lot of small attacks. Like building for both of those is like when you're building out your black or your purple or your green or your blue is really hard. But now you're able to say, okay, I can commit to like a strat that beats that kind of is tailored to try and beat the wide board. And then when you play against other decks, you just need to like understand those matchups when it comes to like maintaining the board advantage. So I think that's probably where the meta's going to go. I think Lucci's going to still be strong. Kid's going to probably make a reemergence since they're able to like they have kind of a decent amount of early pressure to stave off against the Zoro deck. And I think we'll just continue. I hope y'all like the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'll be doing some more of this. I'll probably be doing some more videos going forward in terms of OPO4 testing a little bit. Just start to get used to see what the cards are, and we'll also get in some new format testing once it comes up on the sim. And I appreciate y'all. Thank you. Peace.